really the goal is just to use our stories to bring veterinary medicine to life for the pet caretakers of the world. And we're doing it because we believe that educating these caretakers is the most powerful thing that we can do to improve the life quality of all of the pets that we love. Hey everybody, Dr. Natalie Keith here.
And Dr. Jessica Eastep. We're at Northside Veterinary Hospital in Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Yes, the very one and only Northside Veterinary Hospital in Shawnee, Oklahoma. Very specific. And you have found Vet Tales today. That is the podcast. And today we're doing a topic that that Dr. Eastep has a special interest in, which is behavior.
Animal behavior, yes. It's something I've always been interested in.
Okay, so how? Why?
So actually my dog Rolo, we've had him 9 years now, but he has had horrible separation anxiety his whole life. So kind of having him, learning from him, has kind of piqued my interest and made me want to learn more about it to help other animals.
Right, yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, because Vet Tales, that's the whole point, is like telling our stories, and this is your very own animal.
Yeah.
Whom you love dearly.
Yes. And it was a rough go for many years. He would destroy doors, flooring, and clothing. He would shred everything.
Was he a baby when you got him?
Yes, he was, I think, 8 weeks old when we got him. And then he was not left alone for the first 2 years of his life.
Oh, okay.
Which is where that comes from.
So he was fine then. Mm-hmm. Because he was never alone. But then we're at 2 years of age, and he doesn't have a coping skill.
Correct, yes. He did not know how to be alone. And the few times he was, at that time, my now husband, who's my boyfriend then, the few times he did leave him alone, he's just a puppy chewing on stuff.
You're right. Right.
Which was not the case. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, because sometimes puppies do just chew on stuff.
Yes.
When they're not watched. Because they can.
Yeah. But his was, I'm destroying everything because I'm scared.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what'd you do?
So at that time, we put him on an anxiety medication for a while. And then we just bought a really durable crate.
Okay.
To keep him crated. And up until a year ago, we kept him crated every time we left.
Okay. Yeah. So it was like fluoxetine?
Yeah, it was amitriptyline.
Oh, okay.
It didn't really, to me, seem to work for him. It just made him sleepy.
Yeah.
But did not reduce the anxiety.
For sure.
So really, after a while, we discontinued that. It didn't make a difference before or after having that on board, but we never tried another one.
Yeah.
I didn't think to at that time. And then we just went so many years without doing anything else besides grading him. And then eventually we got another dog, and that made everything better, and now we can let him out.
Okay, I was going to ask what happened a year ago. So.
Yeah. So a year ago, we bought a house, so I wouldn't mind letting him out.
Yeah.
Just in case he did destroy something. But we realized once my mom would babysit him, she would just leave him at her house unattended, and he would be fine. And we realized it's because she has other dogs, and he wasn't alone. So he wouldn't destroy anything.
Oh.
So we got another dog. We moved
Sounds
into
so
our
simple
own house.
now that you say it like that.
Yeah. And so now we leave him out and about with our other dog, Corey, and he does well.
Yeah. And they're fast friends.
Oh,
was she a puppy when you got her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So brought her in as a pup, and they bonded, and now they're buds, and they are never alone.
Correct. Yep. So kind of a unique thing was he just needed someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about just like why behavior, like why are veterinarians talking about behavior? Why is this so important to us?
Yeah. So, over the last decade, 20 years or so, people have bonded, gotten a lot closer with their pets, with their animals, and they're considered family now more so than it was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And so animal behavior has become a lot more important in keeping that human-animal bond.
For
close,
sure.
Because these close relationships we have with our pets, when there is what we perceive as a behavioral problem, that can strain the relationship, put stress on everyone, cause a lot of worry.
What we perceive as a behavior problem. That's brilliant right there. Yeah.
Yeah, because to animals...
It's like a weed, right? Like what makes a weed? It's just growing somewhere you didn't want it to be.
Right, yeah,
There's nothing wrong with that plant. How dare you label it as such?
Yeah, so to the dog or cat, that's a normal behavior for what they're responding to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I've got respect for that. So I remember one time reading some horrifying study about the number of animals that are abandoned because of what we are perceiving as behavioral problems. And at one point, it may or may not be true today, but at one point, it was the number one cause of euthanasia.
Yes. I think it's either one or two.
One or two.
Number one or two now still. It is the number one cause of euthanasia, animal
Yeah,
abandonment.
because even if they're, exactly, because even if they're not euthanizing the pet, they're abandoning them, surrendering them,
Right.
taking them to the shelter, and then the shelter's euthanizing them
Correct.
because of the overwhelm, which is
Right.
just horrifying
Yeah.
to think about.
And
So it's important.
It is. It
Saving
saves
their lives.
Yeah,
Yes.
saves lives. Yes. Just understanding it and working with it. And a lot of these things are manageable.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so what is our role as veterinarians, in your opinion, in this whole beast of a topic called behavior?
Right. And it is a beast. It's huge. There's so much you can go into. But our role is generally, for me, I feel is a starting point because there's so many options and ways to navigate behavior and behavioral abnormalities. So really our role is to offer insight, things you can do at home, trainings you can do, offer medications if needed.
Yeah.
Which medications are not the end-all be-all to behavioral management.
No.
They help mitigate.
Yep.
But that can be an important aspect as well. And then for those cases that are just pretty severe, referring out to either behavioral specialists. There are veterinary specialists that do that now.
Few and far between,
trainer.
but they exist. Yeah. And
Yeah.
the trainers, God love them.
But there's a lot of steps that we can help educate on to mitigate
Yeah.
such things.
I feel like not with puppies, but with adult dogs, that the reason that the client has come to me is because they want a medicine to fix it.
Right, yeah.
Which, the way that my conversations with these owners typically go is like, okay, I think that, medication can have a place in this conversation, because that when a dog is really, really anxious, worked up, scared, whatever the overwhelming emotion can be described as, they are not in a great place to learn.
Correct, yeah.
So if we can decrease that level of anxiety for training times, so you got to do something with it. So you want to decrease the anxiety and start taking them on the leash walks and take them to the behavior class, and start reconditioning to their crate or whatever the thing is. Now their brain is calm enough to learn something new instead of just being like in straight panic mode.
Correct, yeah.
And then hopefully get them off meds.
Right, yeah. And that is the end goal. And it's exactly what you said. It's to put them in the right state of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learn nothing when I'm panicked.
Yeah, I don't either.
Brain shut down.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, for sure. With the exception, I guess, of like maybe storm phobias, I think that could be like a lifelong thing that you're just using like during the 4th of July or during the thunderstorm to get you through that moment.
Yeah.
Although, I think probably still there's a place for reconditioning in that. I don't stress it as much. But when I have a client come to me and they're just like, my dog has XYZ behavior problem, what medication do you have for that? I try to create this expectation of like, hey, this is only going to help so much as you are retraining those built-in habits.
Correct, yeah. And it's all about combining all those things, because unless it's just storms or 4th of July that they just need one medication for
or just
that
when they go to the
day.
groomer.
Right. The training is just as important.
Yeah.
If not more important.
Yeah.
Than the medication.
Interesting. So, okay. What about, let's do the puppy thing, though. Let's talk about it from a puppy's perspective.
Right.
Like, when do we start working on this stuff? When is it a problem? What is normal? What is not?
Right.
Where do we go for help?
Start working on it day one, as soon as you have the puppy. And this is where you do the easy training, the sit, the stay, crate train them, working on their ears and their paws, all
touching
these,
them,
all these normal puppy things that seems so simple and not like they're not a big deal. But by doing this, you're laying the foundation for training in the future. You're building confidence in them, and confident pets have less anxiety.
Yes.
And you're starting, like I said, this foundation on normal puppy behaviors, fixing them before they become problems later on.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess my experience, Ruben is my, let's see, he'll be 2 this December.
Oh my
So
gosh.
isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I'm almost to 3. When I make it to 3, I hear it gets better. No, he's actually a really good dog. He's just high energy because he's a German Shepherd. I've talked about him before on other podcasts, but he responds definitely better to my husband, who's just a little more dominant than I am by nature. But we, for sure, put him in I sent him to a behavioral trainer for 3 weeks, and it was, pivotal in our relationship with him, because I can put him in a downstay on his spot, and he'll stay there while I need to do things. And, when you have a 95-pound puppy, you've got to have some kind of control over them.
Right.
And so, and helping him with housebreaking, and helping him with, feeling comfortable in his crate and sleeping through the night, and all those things she helped us with. And we did that pretty early. I want to say he was maybe 15 weeks or so, or 16 weeks when I sent him to the trainer. And then she came back and actually went through training with me, every couple of weeks for several times, 4 or 5 times, just to make sure I was getting it. Because so much of this is why I struggle with behavior, if we're going to be honest, is that it is a little bit about helping the dog and a whole lot about helping the person help the dog.
Correct. Yeah. And a lot of people are hesitant to take their dog to training because they've had experience in the past, or, you can train your dog to sit, shake, and all those things. And that doesn't mean you're not good at training. It's just these trainers, they've practiced, they've learned, this is what they do. And by taking them to these trainers, it's more focused. They're focused on learning those behaviors you want them to perform. And like I said earlier, you're building confidence in these pets, because when a pet knows what to expect, they don't worry. So you're building behaviors that they can expect from you, that they know are going to happen, so they don't have to stress about it. And so training isn't a bad thing. It doesn't mean you don't know how to train your dog either. It's helpful.
And as my trainer would say, a well-behaved dog and a well-trained dog are not necessarily the same thing. So you can train them, but that doesn't mean they're well-behaved. And so, and then back to the point of what does behaving mean? And usually for us, it means not destroying our property, not injuring people, and things like that. But a lot of it is, I've heard you say in different ways over the the past 12 minutes, fear, afraid, confidence, making them feel secure. And so much of it is about giving them this sound mind, so they're making better decisions.
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to dogs, and a lot of this also kind of goes with researching the breed you're going to get, just properly doing your research, because not all breeds are for all families. And I love German Shepherds, but man, they're one of my favorite breeds, but they are a lot.
Well, Dr. Goodall and I talked about this on our the pet ownership episode, where AKC has this quiz you can go on and take and help you pick the right dog for you. And I am 100% sure I will never come up with German Shepherd. I just wanted one so bad for so long. And granted, I've been fortunate because Ruben is really sound-minded. He's not fearful. He, a fearful German Shepherd is a danger.
Yes, and there's a lot of them.
And there are a lot of them, because I think a lot of people have this concept of, I only want them to like my family. I've actually heard this so many times, even by people who raise German Shepherds. They will say, I only want this dog to know my family, so it will be, protective. They think it's going to be protective because it's not going to trust other people. But that is really just a dog that's extremely insecure with anyone but the family, and that doesn't allow them to make good choices.
And can make it harder medically speaking.
Oh gosh.
When we need to work on them, or save their
they don't
lives
trust us
to
to help them when they need help medically. It's a fiasco.
So that's a big part of behavior, as well as knowing what you're getting into, so you can help start at day one and go from there.
What is this breed going to need of us?
Yes.
Yeah, if you don't want to do a lot of training, like maybe think about a Basset Hound.
Yeah, they don't do much.
They don't.
Yeah.
Some of them are active, but they're just, you don't need to train a Basset.
No.
I met a mean one time. It was quite shocking. Yeah.
That surprises me.
Yes, yeah, it was. I was really surprised. But then that particular Basset ended up having puppies later, and her puppy was really aggressive.
Really?
Yep.
Genetics do play a role.
Yes, nature and nurture both matter. So anyway, okay, so let's just say, Dr. Eastep, that a client comes in, and let's give them a golden doodle. Mm-hmm. What are your first words that you're saying to them? Like, what should I be doing? How can I start working with my puppy at home?
Yes, so working with your puppy at home, so all the important things are teaching them basic commands, sit, stay, lay down, playing with their ears and their paws, just their body as a whole, because when
rolling
they go,
them over so you can see their tummies.
Exactly.
And
when they go to the vet or when they go to the groomer, they're going to be touched all over, and those can be sensitive areas, especially if they've never been touched before. So we have a lot of patients that can become fearful or aggressive when we start trimming their nails or cleaning their ears, and these are things they might need, but can be difficult to do, and so doing that from day one.
Yeah, teaching them it's safe.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt.
Right. And crate training. Crate training is really important because crate can sound bad, but if you do it properly, it can actually be a safe space for them to go to when they're scared, or when you need them to go lay down when you're doing something, or when you have company over. So creating a safe space and a crate for them that they can go to that is only their space. That also helps if they ever needed to be hospitalized, that they can be in a crate. Some animals that have never been crated before panic, but they have to be in hospital because they're so sick.
And they'll become really cage aggressive, and it's very difficult for us to help them.
Right. And so if you do that early on, that can help mitigate that as well. So those are your basics.
Socializing
when you're fully vaccinated. So that's kind of the hardest part right there, is they need to socialize with people and animals early on. However, we don't want them to get sick.
Yeah.
So they don't need to go to the dog park. They don't need to go to the store or anything. But introducing them to new people as often as possible in a controlled setting.
Like going to grandma's house.
Correct, yeah. And if you know the animal, like it's your mom's dog.
Yeah, and they're vaccinated healthy dogs. And
introduce them. And it's always when you're introducing to new animals and people, it's always a slow thing. Don't just bombard them with 5 dogs at once.
Yeah. I mean, how would you feel?
Yeah, that's scary. So that automatically creates a core memory that they got bombarded by 5 dogs, and that's scary.
Memory. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if we do start having problems and we are feeling overwhelmed? Like a really common one I have is the little dogs that will continually bite at ankles or chew on fingers. Or take food from the baby. Like what are places that they can go for help?
Yeah, so there's usually I recommend a trainer. Just
versus
sometimes people will look online, and I do think there's probably good sources online to learn to train those habits away, but there's also a lot of dangerous material online.
So you mean, so instead of like DIY,
right?
Like get a professional,
correct,
and not just like an obedience class.
Correct.
You can train your dog to sit. You can watch YouTube and figure that out.
Right.
But like you need somebody who, like my trainer, it was like she understood what my dog was thinking, which I'm relatively good at that as well. Just 'cause what we do, and that's part of why we wound up where we are. But like. It was like she knew exactly how to get a certain response from him to be able to reward him and repeat it and so forth. So they've just got this really innate skill set.
They do. And they do it all day, every day.
Yeah. And there's a reason they're doing it.
Right. And that's not to say we don't understand animal behavior, but we have a bunch of other
stuff
to do as well.
Yeah. And a lot of times what we're trying to do is quickly resolve an ear infection or a broken toenail or spay a dog. Right. We don't have time to like spend weeks, because I mean
training.
Ruben stayed with her at her house for several weeks, and so it's an investment.
Yeah, and so it's those professional trainers, or in severe cases of anxiety or anything like that, behavioral specialists, as that is an increasing area as well, if needed. But for kind of the general puppyhood stage into training, a good trainer.
Yeah.
Cannot be undervalued.
One of my favorite things to recommend for people to do at home is structured leash walks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always follow it by saying, and I don't mean your dog walking you, I mean you walking your dog.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to the safety, feeling safe and secure and confident. They need to know that you are in charge, that you're like, I've got this, and they can just relax then.
Right.
If they think they're the one in charge, then all of a sudden everything is like, am I in danger? Am I not in danger? Should we attack them? Should we not attack them?
Right.
And everything is a question. And they're trying to quickly decide all of these things, and it creates a lot of anxiety for them.
Right.
And again, a fearful dog is a dangerous dog.
Yes.
And so when you're giving these structured leash walks and you're in control of that, then it allows them to start to trust and to relax.
Right. Yeah. And they know what to expect from you.
Yeah. And physical activity is great for everyone's psyche, you know, just emotionally, mentally, helps clear the brain. And I would encourage people to try to not always take the same path. You know, have 2 or 3, you know, so that it doesn't just become so monotonous that the brain just goes on autopilot and misses the opportunity to, you know, learn in that time.
Right, for sure. And not taking the same path is so important for that reason. It's just, okay, we've walked this 500 times, we're going to walk it again. Nothing ever happens on this walk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it can be hard. I live out in the country. But I almost feel bad for people who live in town in communities that don't have a lot of great stray pet control, because that can sometimes be dangerous. So just being aware that, you know, there may be a rogue dog out, you know, so maybe making sure that the areas you're walking, you feel comfortable, that you know what dogs would or wouldn't be there, that they're all going to be leashed and things like that.
Right. Yeah, and an old neighborhood I lived in Stillwater, I couldn't, and no matter what route I took, I could not find a route where dogs were not just lunging at me or my dogs, so I just didn't walk them there anymore.
Yeah.
Not worth it. So it takes time, but it's worth the effort.
Yeah. So that would just be like the thing to watch out for.
Yeah.
But leash walks in general, if it is possible for you, can be so therapeutic for everybody involved.
Yeah. And then part of that's training them to leash walk.
Yeah. I mean, having a dog leash trained is an imperative life skill for them.
Yes, it is. Everywhere they go.
Yeah. I mean,
because they need to be on a leash everywhere they go.
Trying to drag 140-pound Great Pyrenees into the vet clinic because that they, you know, injured themselves and, you know, have some kind of infection or whatever, and you can't get them to walk, that's a problem.
Right. Yeah, it is.
So, okay. So, let's circle back on anxiety meds, because that's what really people want from a veterinarian.
Yeah.
So, like, break that down for us.
Yeah, so anxiety meds, I kind of talk about it in relation to people. When it comes to anxiety medications, every dog responds to them differently, just like every person responds to them differently.
Yeah.
So not every medication will work for every dog. And generally speaking, for most of our long-term anxiety medications, they take 6 to 8 weeks to take effect. So there's a solid 6 to 8 week period there
where you're just kind of trying to grit it out.
Yeah. So that's also why it's not the end-all be-all. That's why you also need to do training as well, another reason. So there's a few options that we have, and it's kind of figuring out what works best for your pet and which one they respond to, basically.
Yeah, so you've got, I mean, and we talked about like amitriptyline, we talked about fluoxetine. But they take so long to work up, but I find them to be best for things like chronic anxiety.
Yeah, so like separation anxiety, generalized anxiety. I have a lot of Aussies that just are anxious.
Yep.
About anything and everything all the time.
I wonder if I was an Aussie in a past life.
Maybe.
Yeah,
so I have a lot of those that are just always anxious about anything, everything all the time. And so these medications for separation anxiety, generalized anxiety can really help. They can help in fear as well. Fear and phobias tend to be associated with events more or less, but generally they can help with those as well.
I think it's interesting too that sometimes, this is for our cat people, if we have a cat that is having some behavioral issues and you think it's anxiety, but it's actually a bully behavior, then you can put them on this medication and drastically make it worse.
Right, yeah. Because you're supposed to give it to the victim.
Yeah.
Not the bully.
Yeah, which can sometimes be harder to discern than you think.
Yeah. Cats are their own. They're their own can of worms.
Yeah. Yeah, not tiny dogs, as we
their
say.
behavior is completely different than dogs, and often for many different reasons.
Yes.
Cats are just weird.
Yes.
So for them, it can be getting down to a lot of underlying problems with them, and a lot of times it's an underlying medical problem.
Yeah.
Unless you get to the bully kind of scenario.
Yeah, if it's an environmental stressor,
right,
you know, that's a whole other.
Yeah, and cats can get stressed out about the weirdest of things.
Yeah, people are like, how can she be stressed? She sleeps 23 hours a day. And I'm like, you'd be surprised.
There's something. You probably bought a new box into the house.
How dare you?
And that was enough for them to set them off.
You changed the Scentsy.
Yes, they're weird like that.
Yeah.
But
very stressful.
I typically find it's easier to treat cats behaviorally, just because once you start asking questions, you find out what changed, what's new, what medical condition they have. And most of the time it's something that's, we found it, and we can work on that. A lot easier than dogs.
And I feel like that some of the more natural, like pheromone-based anxiety reducers are much more effective for cats.
Right, yeah.
You know, they have got the Feel Away.
I use Feel Away for my cat.
Yeah, which has all the, you know, got the room diffuser thing, plus the collar, the wipe, the
all
spray.
The things, everything.
Yeah. And then the Calm Food by Royal Canin for those chronic UTIs, which are usually anxiety-based or stress-related, or stress cystitis, whatever. That food is remarkably helpful because I sometimes feel silly. Like, here, have them feed this food that says calm on it. It's going to help.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
But it does.
It does. I use it for my cat.
It's the DHA in it, which, like mother's milk, hormone, stuff like that. And then, of course, the Feel Away, I believe, is the pheromones that are based off of, like, you know, when your cat's happy and they drool and they, like, slobber everywhere. It's like, this is a safe place.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like lavender for your cat.
And it does seem weird. But it works.
It does.
It's wild, yeah.
Dogs don't seem to respond the same way because they have, like, the Feel Away has a Adaptil is the dog counterpart to that, and I have not really been super successful with it.
I haven't heard much success about it in general.
Yeah.
And I don't know just the difference between cat and dogs, but they are very different behaviorally.
Yes. Yeah. Safe to say. And then, like, the other, I guess, back to the anxiety medication conversation, you know, we've got this, these long-acting ones, which, you know, for more of your anxiety lifestyle, I guess. But then we do have things like trazodone. Right. We use really commonly Xanax or alprazolam for those incidents.
Yes, so I'm afraid of storms, the groomer, the vet.
Yeah.
Fireworks.
Yeah.
Things like that. And I typically always see pretty good response.
Yeah, occasionally I'll have a dog that just laughs at the face of trazodone.
Yes. Yeah.
Cats, you can use gabapentin as a per incident anti-anxiety medication, which is great because it's so safe. But yeah, I just had one the other day that trazodone just not maybe even made the dog worse.
Yeah, and some of those drugs can very rarely cause
the opposite opposite response. So.
Very rarely. I haven't seen one yet, though. That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just like, I think in those cases I start to wonder, is it not anxiety based? And so you remove the anxiety and now whatever else was bothering the animal is just more prominent.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah, who knows with them, but definitely like those for the situational anxieties or fears. And we don't typically like to use those long term, not because they necessarily cause a problem, but they're useful for those situations.
Yeah.
So, you know, we want to be able to use those on those situations that it's much needed.
Yeah.
Rather than as
and on dogs that are like okay, so here's an example. I actually these two Pomeranians came in today just for their heartworm shots, but they are a wild little pair of Pomeranians, and mom had to move. And she went from, like, this big house to an apartment or townhome kind of thing. So, like, we've got shared walls. And these dogs are not okay about it. And they yap. because that's what
yeah.
Pomeranians do.
Yep.
And who else is not okay now is the neighbor.
Yep.
And so she's like, I'm going to get kicked out of my townhouse. And so she's got the dog going to a dog trainer.
Perfect.
Proper dog trainer. And we're going to start the anxiety medication, like fluoxetine, but like, what do we do right now? Because it's really only bad when the mom is going to work, which was only like 3 days a week for a certain period of hours. So it wasn't like a ton of time.
Right.
So we actually decided at that point to put the dogs on trazodone in conjunction with the fluoxetine. So I've got something immediate right now on the days that you're going to be gone while you're in training. And we're uploading the fluoxetine into the system for long-term anxiety relief. And then our hope is that, after this move becomes old news, 6, 8, 10, 12 months down the road, we'll be off all medications.
Right.
So that's just kind of an interesting situation or case where I feel like all of those things came into play out of absolutely nobody's fault and everything else had been fine. But it's, kind of like Rolo's situation where it's like everything was fine until the environment changed and now we have a problem and we got to figure out how to get back to normal.
Yeah. And, for those Pomeranians, that was a completely normal response.
Yeah. Well, who wouldn't?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And, that's for them something normal. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's like,
to work with it.
Circling it back to the German Shepherd, like you want him to, or her, but in my case it's a boy, you want him to bark at someone dangerous. You do not want him to bark at your neighbor and her kids when they come over to bring you muffins.
Right.
Like we've got to figure out how to teach this dog what is really dangerous versus not. But if he really thinks the neighbor and her kids and their muffins are dangerous, then he's doing his job.
Right. Yeah.
And so the same for the Pomeranians. They're just trying to alert mom that, hey, the situation is
wrong.
wrong. This isn't where we live. We're in someone else's house. We need to evacuate.
There's something going on the other side of this wall.
We can hear people.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, for animals, they're normal behaviors. They're normal to them. To us, they're abnormal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you could go on, like, quantifying that for ages. Like, you take a aggressive dog. The pit bull gets a bad rap for it because some of them were bred to be dog aggressive. Right. And so for them, that's what they were supposed to do. But obviously it's wildly unacceptable behavior. And so we have to figure out how do we help this dog learn a new way. Right. Or at least avoid scenarios that could be problematic.
Yeah. And, for a lot of those, there are, I don't want to say severe, but there are cases that do get to a certain point that you may not be always able to fix it completely, but you can manage it.
Yeah.
And as long as you're willing to manage it as best as you can and recognize your dog's limitations, you can still live a really good, happy life with them.
Yeah. Understanding what they can and can't handle and what potential outcomes of certain scenarios there are.
Right.
Yeah. It's a big can of worms. And, like, not to get downtoned, but on the Rainbow Bridge episode, Dr. Dame and I talked about there are certain behavioral cases that do end up ultimately being euthanized because of the danger that animal is posing.
Right.
So what a dog I mentioned then was this Great Dane that was older but not old, like maybe 6 or 7, and had attacked a little girl unprovoked, bit her on the shoulder, put her in the hospital. And the dog had been exhibiting some increasingly odd behaviors over the past few months, and the owners just literally couldn't. And so I could understand why euthanasia makes sense.
Right.
But then you take Sandra, one of our girls, has a dog named Ivy, and she's like a little corgi mix, maybe 20 pounds.
Yes.
That thing is back in her prime. So this has been, 6-7 years ago. This dog was a land shark and would bite small children on a whim. Like, she would see a tiny human and attack.
Oh.
And it was a problem because Sandra's family would get together, and lots of them. There's big family would all get together, and it was like a big issue that this dog was biting children.
Right, all those kids.
But she didn't cause as much trauma. It was like, ouch, it's a bruise, maybe a scrape, maybe a puncture, but the damage was more minor. So at this point, Sandra did all the things. We went into, she went with Lorenzo's dog training group, and she was strict with it. She followed all the rules. We did some anxiety medication initially, but not a ton, if I recall. which I may be a little bit wrong on that, but Sandra could correct me. Either way. And now that dog will play with kids.
Yeah.
It took about a year.
Yeah.
But because that we had lower stakes in the game, if you will,
Right.
we were able to use that time, and Sandra was able to physically handle this dog. When she would get up and try to run off, Sandra could grab the leash and put her back down,
which
where
you
can't do with a 160-pound Great Dane. And so, and sometimes behavioral issues can come from true neurologic disorders like a brain tumor that's growing, which was my personal suspicion with that Great Dane based off of their description of some of the behaviors. I feel like the dog had developed a brain tumor and became sporadically aggressive.
Yeah.
And those are the hardest.
Yeah. It happened to my family's dog. He was 11 or 12, had always been the sweetest black lab, never had a problem, and then suddenly he just started attacking the other dogs in the house at random, and kind of eventually came to the consensus he had cognitive dysfunction.
Yeah.
So doggy Alzheimer's, and I mean, you can't really do much to that because just like Alzheimer's with people, they just lose awareness and it progresses. And my mom is tiny. My mom's 90 pounds. And the dog was 90 pounds. And she kept having to break up these fights. And at some point, he almost bit my mom. Not purposefully, but
just in the middle of
the
scuffle.
Of it. And at some point, we had to come to the realization, no one's living a good quality of life here. And this is only going to get progressively worse. So we had to make a hard decision with that as well.
So I think, which, as much as I hate going there with it, I also think it's important to like acknowledge to people who found themselves in that situation that we get you too.
Right.
And so, which is much different than, hey, my dog won't quit peeing in the house, so I dropped him off at the shelter.
Right.
And those are the situations we're trying to avoid.
Yes.
You have tools, you have resources, you need to nip it in the bud, and try to get these pets the help they need to learn better behaviors so you don't destroy the human-animal bond.
Yeah, right, yeah. And so it's understanding a lot of them are fixable.
Yeah.
Even curable if you just work on it. And then there are those rare cases that they have a brain tumor or they have Alzheimer's or things like that.
So it's a whole spectrum of things. And I think if you're not sure, if you're listening and you're not sure what to do, if you're local, we can tell you who we would recommend for whatever problem you're facing. If they've got one problem, I might recommend somewhere versus another problem might be better suited for a different trainer. And then we're here to help you with quick ideas on things and kind of listen to where your problems are coming from. And Dr. Eastep especially really enjoys going deep on those behavior cases. That's one of her, besides being an amazing surgeon, which is my favorite thing about her, because that means it's less surgeries I have to do. I like internal medicine. So yay, Dr. Eastep.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, that's right. You cut out those foreign bodies that your dog ate because it wasn't in a crate.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding. We're not judging. My dog, it's amazing. I haven't had to have Ruben in for foreign body removal.
Having a puppy, we just got a puppy, and it is amazing. I'm reminded what puppies eat.
You turn
daily.
your back 1 second, and they chewed up the remote control. And
oh yes, he's chewed up ours. I've never had a dog do that.
When I was in vet school, I had a dog jump up onto my desk and get my glasses down and chew them up. I was like, what? And they were like metal and glass, or plastic, whatever lenses are made of. But it wasn't like they were even like plastic.
Weird.
Why?
Don't know.
Why?
Yeah, they'll pick up the weirdest stuff. So definitely no judgment because I'm experiencing it again.
Yes, we are with you. Yes, we could go on for days of our own dog problems. So. Anyway, it's a big topic. I think, down the road we could definitely start chunking out more specific behavior issues and walking through those. But all of these early onset podcasts, I think our goal is just to touch the high points and categorize things and then come back later for specifics. So if anybody's listening has questions, comment on the podcast, send an email to Northside Veterinary Hospital in Shawnee. We love your questions because that's the whole reason we're here is to answer those questions that we've already been hearing. So, any other parting words of wisdom?
Nope. If you ever have any questions, seriously, just call. We're happy to talk with you, and we'd rather help you get that figured out than anything else. So
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Y'all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.